On April 19, 2025, the global trade landscape experienced a seismic shock. China suddenly halted $10 billion worth of American cargo at the port of Shanghai, citing routine inspections as the official reason. But let's not take that explanation at face value. This wasn't about compliance checklists or paperwork delays. It was a pointed, strategic response in the escalating trade tension between Washington and Beijing. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on this high-stakes standoff. From clogged cargo lanes to rising tariff threats, what we're witnessing could spiral into a full-blown economic confrontation. Buckle up, gearheads. Here's what's really unfolding behind the headlines. When reports emerged that Shanghai, the busiest port on Earth, was deliberately slowing down American shipments, the official story pointed to environmental and safety assessments. But insiders in the logistics industry weren't convinced. This looked less like a coincidence and more like deliberate payback for the latest U.S. tariff increases. And this is no ordinary port. Shanghai handles 17% of China's total trade and processes close to 47 million containers annually. Now $10 billion worth of U.S.-bound goods, including semiconductors, EV components, and vital medical equipment, are stuck in limbo. In just 7 days, analysts recorded a 20% spike in port congestion. Unlike the 2018 trade war that mostly targeted U.S. farm exports, this time Beijing went straight for the jugular, America's tech and healthcare industries. Instead of hitting back with retaliatory tariffs that could invite WTO backlash, China chose a subtler yet equally damaging method, a silent, targeted chokehold on supply chains. A stealth strike, economically speaking, quiet but devastating. And the fallout? It's already hitting home. This isn't just a shipping delay. It's impacting everything from consumer electronics to daily groceries. Semiconductor shortages are slowing down electronics production. Word is the iPhone 17 launch might be postponed by as much as 2 months. Laptops could vanish from shelves by midsummer. Major automakers like Tesla, GM, and Ford are scrambling as battery supply chains, of which 70% rely on China, start to falter. Small EV delivery fleets are being told to expect delays stretching into next year. One of the most serious pain points? Healthcare. Nearly 40% of U.S. syringe supplies and around 1/3 of diagnostic kits are made in China. Hospitals are already reporting early signs of shortages, just as flu season kicks in. Prices are also on the rise. The National Retail Federation expects a 5 to 10% hike in the cost of electronics, auto parts, and appliances by mid-2025. Your $500 smartphone? Likely to hit $550. That $20,000 car? Now pushing $22,000. And with port demurrage fees stacking up at $100 to $200 per container per day, the expenses are snowballing. Before we shift gears, make a quick pit stop, hit that like button, and subscribe to Piston Pundit for sharp, no-nonsense updates on the auto industry and global trade. Now let's talk about the next major blow, tariff retaliation. While China held up U.S. shipments, the U.S. hit back. Starting October 14, 2025, American ports will begin imposing steep docking fees of $1 million to $3.5 million on every vessel built in China. Ports are already raising red flags. Gene Soroka, executive director at the Port of Los Angeles, a key artery in U.S. logistics, warns that even a modest 10% dip in cargo volume could lead to widespread layoffs. Inbound shipments from China have already plunged 25%. Shipping companies are scrambling to reroute operations through South Korean and Japanese vessels. But there's a snag. Chinese state-owned shipping giant COSCO dominates many U.S. trade lanes and depends heavily on ships made in China. There's no easy workaround. Retail behemoths like Walmart and Target are stockpiling goods in anticipation of supply shortages. Meanwhile, trucking fleets are watching freight volumes bounce like an over-revved tachometer. The upshot? A prolonged, bruising trade war that's going to affect everyone, from tech consumers to DIY mechanics searching for spare parts. So how is the United States countering this? by doubling down on domestic production. Billions are being funneled into new manufacturing hubs through initiatives like the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, with a focus on semiconductors and EV batteries. But there's a catch. Most of these factories won't be operational until 2027 or later. Until then, America remains vulnerable. China still commands 70% of global EV battery output and controls 80% of the rare earth minerals vital for electronics and green technology. Efforts to pivot supply chains toward Vietnam, Japan, and South Korea are costly and not yet sufficient to break China's dominance. Even air freight is feeling the strain. Bookings out of China are down 30%, and key U.S. hubs like Chicago and Dallas are experiencing significant delays. Meanwhile, shipping rates from Southeast Asia have jumped 15%. If current trade negotiations fall apart, Washington is preparing another wave of tariffs. But economists warn that a full decoupling from China could shave up to 2% off the U.S. GDP, potentially costing hundreds of billions in lost economic activity. At the same time, China isn't standing still. It's forging stronger economic alliances across Europe and Asia, rapidly setting up alternative trade corridors. The pressure on America's supply chain is only intensifying, and the clock is ticking. This conflict extends well beyond trade. It's a confrontation between two competing global visions. U.S. lawmakers increasingly view supply chain resilience as a national security priority. Enter the New Ships for America Act, a legislative push to rebuild America's shipbuilding industry and reduce dependency on Chinese manufacturing. Consider this. China builds over 1,700 ships a year, the U.S. fewer than 5. This staggering gap underscores deeper structural vulnerabilities, from rare earth reliance to critical medical imports. Today's cargo disruptions could be just a taste of what lies ahead. Even powerful state-backed firms like Costco are struggling to adapt. And as China refines its strategy, the United States faces rising costs, weakened industrial footing, and fragile infrastructure. If trends hold, this 2025 shipping freeze may mark the beginning of a much larger decoupling, one that could ignite flashpoints over Taiwan, the South China Sea, and beyond. The takeaway? Supply chains have evolved from neutral channels to geopolitical battlegrounds. The global power struggle is shifting into high gear. These port delays, rising tariffs, and inflationary spikes aren't just temporary turbulence. They're the early signs of a deeper transformation. America's industrial revival is real, but the road is bumpy, marked by rising costs, job shifts, and fierce competition. Meanwhile, China is responding with speed, strategy, and surgical precision. The real question isn't whether an economic Cold War is coming. It's how fast, how fierce, and at what price. Strap in. The 2025 supply chain standoff is only the beginning. And the engine of global change? It's just warming up.